Hey guys, really quickly before this video gets started, I wanted to pick your brains about Patreon. I've been trying to get my Patreon going for a while now, but never really made a push for it really until now. You've probably noticed the more frequent and consistent uploads on my channel, and while I don't necessarily plan to do YouTube full time right now, uploading regularly and getting involved in other sites like Patreon is a way for me to gauge if I ever could when I graduate from college next year. There are also a few things that I want to do with the channel moving forward that I wouldn't want to invest in unless I knew I had some of you guys behind me on those ideas. I've got my Patreon set up with different rewards if you should choose to support me, and I will continue to update those as people sign up. Obviously, Patreon as well as buying merchandise or stuff from cuts are completely optional, but doing so goes a long way for me and this channel's future. If you want to support me further than just watching my videos, you can follow the Patreon link in the description or check out the other ways to contribute linked there as well. Thank you guys for watching my content throughout the years, and enjoy the video. Batman Arkham Origins released on October 25th, 2013. Despite at the time having never played anything Batman Arkham before, I remember looking forward to the game a lot. I looked forward to it so much that I planned on creating an entire YouTube walkthrough of the game on my old channel. An old channel that you guys are never gonna find. My only experience to Batman Arkham prior to that was playing the 15-minute long Arkham City demo on PS3 over and over again, which is also in an old YouTube video that I pray to God none of you find for very, very obvious reasons.
Don't you dare pick up that bag. Punch it to dodge. Oh my god, I told him to punch it to dodge and he didn't punch it to dodge. Oh, I sat on you. I'm sorry. That's not the last guy?
As you could expect, the playthrough never happened, but I still completed the game on my own time, and thanks to PS Plus being awesome, I was eventually able to play both Arkham Asylum and City when they became free sometime later. And of course, I became hooked, making Arkham Knight on PS4 a must-play in 2015. Now almost 7 years later, I thought I'd go back and play Arkham Origins again. Only this time when I have some actual subscribers and the ability to digitally record things instead of just putting a camcorder in front of the TV. You might be wondering why I'm doing this now, and it's pretty much because my EA Premiere is going to run out soon. Thank you, Game Changer program. And because I'm only taking 12 credits this semester and I'm kind of bored out of my mind. But I guess that means more videos for you guys, so you're welcome in advance. I'm pretty sure the PC port had problems when the game first came out, but thankfully those bugs seem to have been squashed over the past 7 years. They've just been seemingly replaced with giving Batman superhuman strength.
Look at Randy Orton slithering. Watch out!
Especially when it first released, Batman Arkham Origins was generally liked, but fell into a typical case of prequelitis. Unlike the critical acclaim of the games that came before it, the reviews for Origins were certainly mixed. Some deemed the game as pretty mediocre, predictable, and lacking in innovation. This was mainly due to technical issues, replication and modification of previous Arkham games' content, and a multiplayer mode that was considered an unnecessary addition to the series. For a while, it felt like developers and many fans wanted to act like it never even existed, negating it completely from the next-gen remaster of Rocksteady's other two Batman games. Yikes. But time and perspective changed things, and I thought it would be a good time to take a look back at this awkward game and break down why it gets the reputation it does, and see if that's valid or not. Batman Arkham Origins was playing from behind right at the get-go. First of all, the game was a prequel, which can be good, but generally speaking, aren't the greatest things in the world. Also, a younger Batman means younger voice actors. Both Roger Craig Smith and Troy Baker did a really good job in this game, but there's always going to be people who will complain that they didn't hear Mark Hamill and Kevin Conroy. And probably the biggest reason, this game wasn't developed by Rocksteady, who had made Arkham Asylum and Arkham City. All these factors combined to create a product that was already not as exciting as the previous iterations. One of, if not the main reason why Origins existed in the first place, was to give Rocksteady more time to develop their next-gen Batman game. Moving on to PS4 and Xbox One, it was going to take them a little bit more time than usual to create the next and potentially final Arkham game. However, Warner Brothers didn't want the people waiting, so they made sure they kept up with the pattern of having a new Batman game every other year, and inserted this prequel right in the middle of Rocksteady's projects. I know all of these facts about Arkham Origins might give the impression that the game wasn't very good, but as I look back at it, I find it to be especially impressive how good this game is, given the time frame and circumstances it had. Let's take a look at some of the original complaints with the game in more detail now, and then discuss whether they're valid or not. Technical issues aside, the main complaint people seem to have with the game is a general lack of passion. In many ways, Arkham Origins was a copy of the games that came before it, just without some of the soul. To many people, the game felt like a generic copy-paste instead of an original work that validated being in the series. While I can agree to this to some extent, I don't think Arkham Origins is bland. Like the other games, there's a fair share of Easter eggs and nods hidden throughout the open world for keen eyes to notice. Gotham City itself might not be as gloomy and gothic as it is in the other games, but it's large and detailed, the music is intense and Batman-like. Plus it mixes in Carol of the Bells, which is such a big bonus for me. I do agree that through playing the game again, there is something slightly off about just the entire experience in general. In a way, it does feel slightly more generic than something like Arkham City, but it doesn't ruin the entire experience. The presentation can be a little goofy at times, many assets have a lack of polish to them, but as I said, given the time frame this game was made in, plus the fact that this game is now 7 years old, makes these tiny gripes seem pretty insignificant. I will say this though, generally speaking, I'm fine with the game lacking in innovation. The Arkham combat system is essentially the best in the business, so I don't see a problem with them literally not touching it at all. There were some small improvements here and there though. Different animations, some new enemy types. It's all pretty basic stuff, but none of them are negative changes. A more detailed detective vision allows for the deconstruction of certain crimes. While it's pretty basic and easy to use, I found that to be a good addition too. And it seemed like Rocksteady thought so too, as the same mechanic was used a few years later in Arkham Knight. I'm going to try to steer away from talking about Arkham Knight as much as possible in this video, but it's so darn near impossible not to compare. Because quite honestly, I feel like if we wanted to be as stingy with our criticisms, we could tear apart both of these games equally. People say things like the shot gloves in Arkham Origins break the game, but you can say the same thing about fear takedowns. And as a side note, I don't really know why people care about that so much. It's an optional mechanic in a single player game, so it's not like AI gets pissed off and breaks the controller like some kid on the internet when you kill him unfairly. People criticize Arkham Origins for negating Black Mask and making it another Joker story, but you can literally say the same thing with Arkham Knight. People get mad at Arkham Origins for sticking too close to the source material, but then also get irritated at Arkham Knight for trying to innovate by shoving the Batmobile down our throats, adding too many ridiculous enemy types, and not implementing beloved things from the previous games, like good boss battles. And that brings us to another thing that Arkham Origins does really well. Boss battles. Not only does it have a lot of them, but they're paced throughout the story well, they're all different in their mechanics, testing Batman's entire arsenal, they play into the narrative well, and most importantly, they're challenging and fun. The only negative thing I can say about the boss battles is that many of them borrow mechanics from Arkham Asylum and City, but that point is so insignificant to me when you look at the bigger picture. I will admit the game isn't perfect, and in my opinion, it's not the best in the series. Those few things like the lack of polish and that feeling of genericness when you play it holds the game back for me. There are games out there that feel far more manufactured than this, but when compared to Rocksteady's games, you can feel a difference. I also felt like Rocksteady deliberately introduced new mechanics and enemy types into the game periodically, whereas in Arkham Origins it becomes very obvious when you're playing a tutorial. While playing though, I did notice a few more legitimate and practical criticisms. Some of which I didn't notice as much when I first played the game all those years ago, probably because it was my first Arkham experience and I didn't have anything to compare it to. While I do weirdly love the small detail of having Batman square up before entering a fist fight, which he doesn't do in other Arkham games for some reason, and I've never heard anybody talk about this, but I don't know, it matters to me. The gameplay is just very clunky at times though, especially when fighting and flying. I went and played a little bit of Arkham Knight to compare, and had a much smoother experience, so these gripes aren't coming just because you think I suck at the game or something, which I still probably do. While I don't think I really died at all through my playthrough, I did find it hard to get and keep a free flow going. There were a lot of times where you would hit strike and Batman would literally swing and miss, messing up your combo. Sometimes he would fly across the room and destroy dudes, but other times find no one to punch, even if you would directionally move him towards the next guy to hit. Combat will become especially frustrating when you added heavy armor guys, because I cannot tell you how many times Batman would hit one of them when I didn't want him to, or I would stun them, counter someone else, and then the guy's stun would go away. This wasn't a thing in other games, you could chain them together. You could say that this makes combat harder, but I would personally disagree and argue that it just makes it more tedious. Even worse was the flying though. Not only did it feel like physics just didn't work sometimes, I can't tell you how many times I felt like I was losing altitude for no reason, or the grappling hook would fling me in the opposite direction more times than it flung me in the direction that I was originally going in. Not to mention, and This has been a pretty well-known criticism since the beginning, but there are surprisingly few things to grapple onto. There are a few big buildings and Gotham's bridge that feel impossible to get across, despite it appearing like there's an endless amount of stuff to grab onto. Gotham City is beautiful, but it is far from practical. No game is without its flaws. Batman Arkham Origins has its fair share of problems and shortcomings. Does it have more or less than the other Arkham games? Debatable. In my opinion, the flaws it suffers from are just different. The result of a less experienced studio trying to replicate an incredibly popular and successful franchise in only about a year or two. Thinking about the task given to them, Warner Bros. Montreal did a really good job. And who knows, maybe the next Arkham game, if there is still one in development, will come from them, because Rocksteady is done with Batman, as far as I've heard. In my opinion, Arkham Origins doesn't deserve the hate it gets. It has a fair share of problems, but it earns its right to be in this series. For me, and this is just my personal opinion, the story of Arkham Origins is the best in all of the Arkham games. Cities is really good too, but I have a soft spot for Christmas. And the story was something I barely talked about in this video, but it's excellent, despite having a different tone and style than the other games. Arkham Knight is the best for graphics and presentation, which isn't a surprise since it's the latest one. I actually enjoyed the gameplay in it the most too, despite the severe lack of good boss battles and kind of an over-influence on the Batmobile and the whole like team-up thing they were trying to do. But both Free Flow and Predator, when you're just doing them, like without all the extra crap in the way, ooh, it's so good. And then I think Arkham City is probably the best of them overall. Arkham Asylum is really good too, but since I played these games out of order back in the day, it may have ruined some things for me. But I'm curious to hear what you guys think. Does Arkham Origins deserve the hate it gets? Which game of the series is your favorite? Let me know down in the comment section. If you enjoyed the video, leaving me a positive rating is greatly appreciated. For more videos like this every week, make sure to subscribe. Thank you all so much for watching, God bless, and I'll see you in the next one.